Hello, the title of this video is DIY Workshop Electrical Wiring. This video is going to specifically focus on the service entrance. This is the project that I undertook here the last year or so, and wanted to do a series of videos from a do-it-yourself perspective, from someone that has minimal wiring experience and is mostly self-taught. And so maybe you're looking to do a project similar to this and wanting to get some more information, so hopefully I can help out. This is what I started with here. It's a 240 volt 200 amp service that's coming into this workshop. The service was originally put in the 70s, so we've got some dated stuff on the outside here, and we're looking to upgrade that starting here at the service entrance and working our way inside, which will be subjects for future videos. Here's another shot. We're doing an overhead service, and luckily our pole's right here next to the workshop, so we don't have far to go. And at this point the meter has been pulled. That was after the electrical company was called, so they come out, pull the meter out of the socket, and they also take the wire loose from where it comes out of the weatherhead there at the top of the workshop, and they take the wire and either take it completely off, or they tie it up on the pole itself until inspections are done and service is cleared to come back and be restored to the building. Alright, so here is the new box, the new meter socket after the old stuff was torn off. I took a 2x8 board and cut it to the proper length and width, and used that as the shim or base, if you will, to mount the meter base. And so this 2x8 is just a treated board, and I screwed it into the building itself, and then just screwed the meter socket there into the 2x8. And this meter socket actually has to be an approved unit from the electrical company that provides you power. So their meter obviously has to be compatible with your socket. So typically what they'll do is one of two things. They'll provide you a list of approved meter sockets that you can go out to any electrical service company and buy. Or I say electrical service, I meant electrical supply. And so as long as you buy one that's on that list, then you're in good shape. Or you can do like I did and just buy it from the electrical company themselves. So there's no question that you're going to get the right one if you do it that way. Alright, so this is the meter base installed, and the rigid 2-inch conduit has been screwed back in, and we're about 5.5 feet, I believe, above grade. That's a requirement in one of your codes, either the national codes or your local code that most of the time supersedes any national codes. And so in my case it needed to be between 5 and 6 feet above grade, and I think I split the difference, and so we're right at 5.5 feet, and that's from the center of the socket there to the grade level. Alright, and so here's the top of our 2-inch rigid conduit that's protruding out the roof. I believe this is at the maximum height that I was allowed to do without a guide wire, which was, I'm pretty sure it was 36 inches. And so if it's any higher than whatever the maximum is, then you have to install guide wire so that your conduit is rigid and you don't, well, that's a bad term. You're using rigid conduit, but basically you're wanting to add more support and structure to that conduit, and as you get up in height, the less stable that's going to be. So that would be why the guide wire requirement. But since I was just under the maximum for my code, then there was not any required. Alright, so here's another shot at it. The meter base is installed, the rigid conduit is screwed in back in place, it's protruding the roof. Like I said, I think in my case it was 36 inches. One of the things that you'll need to take in consideration with all this is, so one of the first things I mentioned was the box itself has to be between, like in my case, between 5 and 6 feet. The second consideration is how high your with an overhead service, how high your wires are going to be above grade level. So and it all depends on what's going under it. So if there was a road going under it, the wires would have to be, a requirement would have to be so high. If it was just pedestrian walk, then maybe it's not quite as high. It's, a different height, but there's going to be some type of requirement there, and so that would dictate how long of a piece of conduit that you would need, and then again would dictate if you had to come up way above the roof line to get that overhead service up where it needed to be. Then that again, if you put you above the maximum, you would have to do guide wires. And so again, be sure that you take all the codes in consideration and the requirements that is contained within that. So you see here, I've got also a new hole board and an LB. Actually, has reused one of the LBs here installed there, and it's my new breaker panel is on the inside, and it's at the right height, and that's how I determined where my hole needed to be drilled for that LB. There's a better shot of it. And I just used a hole saw. I've got aluminum siding there, and then the wood that's underneath that, then obviously for the walls of the shop. And you can see there my backing panel for my breaker box on the inside is covering up the existing hole that was there for the old service. And obviously I had a different type of breaker box in there. It was a side entrance. The wires came into the side of the box, as opposed to this one comes in through the top. So that's one of the reasons why the hole was lower on the old service versus the new. And there's just a shot of what I was talking about. So I got the new box installed on the inside where it needs to be, and then basically marking my hole from the inside out, and that's how I determine where, because these things have got these panels have got knockouts, so you determine which side of the panel you either go. It looks like in one of the four corners you could get top left, top right, bottom left, and then once you figure out that, then you can mark your hole and start drilling. Alright, and then it looks like this one last shot. I don't know if I've got any specific reason for this one particular picture to be in here, but you notice on the inside, if you're looking on that meter socket, those four screws there, that's what's holding the socket, and that's what's screwed into the tube 8 that's behind it. Alright, and then here's here at the big box store a example of the conduit that's the LB that's being used for the conduit, and that's how I get into the building is with that. And with these LBs, basically you've got a panel or a plate that you can take off with a couple of screws, and you have access to, so you got your 90 there, and you've got access to the to make that bend. You can pull the wires actually out of the conduit and then put back in, so it's much easier to make that 90-degree turn when you have access to the back of the LB. Alright, so here is the finished conduit. So basically the way I was able to determine this vertical piece of rigid conduit that's connecting the two LBs, that length that it needed to be, I first took the second LB and attached it to the meter socket using what's called a close nipple. And what that is basically just a piece of rigid conduit that's all threads. So there's from one end to the other, it's nothing but just a threaded piece. So put that in there and attach it securely and line it up to where the holes are vertical with each other, and then I just measure that gap in between, and that's actually then a custom length cut piece of 2-inch rigid, and then just thread it on each end. And then you can see in this particular picture, which was the only one I had of this conduit coming together, but you can see I've already started on the wiring, but I'll touch on the wiring piece of it here in a couple slides. So this is one other piece to mention, is the conduit itself, where it attaches into the meter socket. It is on the inside, it is secured with this grounding bushing. And the nice thing about, since we're using all metal conduit, it needs to be grounded for safety purposes. So they've got a lug you can see on that attaches to the bushing, and then you would use like a number 4 piece of copper wire then to attach that to the wire to this grounding bushing lug here, and then it would run inside your conduit and attach to your ground bar inside your breaker box. And that's how you ground the metal conduit. And one of those one of those grounding bushings is also on the inside here. So I've got 2 of those bushings in use. One that's installed inside the meter base, and I don't know if that lug is actually on there at this point, so that's probably why it's not showing up in the picture. And then one inside the meter base attaching the close nipple LB, all that to the inside of the meter base. And as you can see, there's the panel there with the wires after they were run in. I'm using aluminum wire. You typically have a choice, so you can use copper or aluminum. If you go with aluminum, you have to it'll be a bigger wire, and that's just because of the characteristics of aluminum versus copper. So usually aluminum is the more attractive option because it's cheaper, but you have to deal with the fact that it's usually a somewhat larger wire than the copper alternative. In my case, it was for the conductive wires, the 2 hot wires, they were 250 kc mil size wires, so that's pretty good size wire. And then I believe the neutral was a 4-aught size. And what you always want to make sure of when you're using aluminum wire is that anywhere it connects to a lug, you're using some anti-corrosive lubricant that you put on the conductor, and you can buy that where you get the wire and your other electrical supplies. So here's a good shot of the box, the meter socket with all the wires run. So starting at the top two lugs, these are the two wires, the two positive wires, if you will, that are running up the conduit and out the top of the masthead, or the weatherhead, excuse me, and then you've got the equivalent two lugs at each corner that take the two hot wires inside to the breaker box. The center wire is the smaller neutral wire, and it is all one piece, so it is not cut from all the way to where it connects to the service that comes in from the pole all the way into the breaker box. That is one piece of wire. What you do is as it passes through this meter socket, you strip the wire here, and you can see there's two lugs that actually hold down that wire, and that's a stripped piece of bare wire that's under there. And then right beside the neutral, you'll notice a number 4 bare copper wire, and that's going down inside of a piece of PVC conduit that goes into the ground and attaches to a ground rod. And there'll be some more pictures of that here in the next couple of slides. Alright, so here's the ground that I talked about. In my case, the codes did not require that the ground actually be in conduit, but I just thought that it would be a little bit more safer. It would protect the wire better if it was in something. So I just put a piece of, I believe that's 1/2 inch PVC conduit, and screwed it to the building with hold downs to keep all that secure. So here's a requirement that was part of the codes, was to install a ground bar, and what this is for is to provide a grounding point for any additional services that might be installed on the outside of the building that would require a ground. Typically in a residential scenario, that would be like cable TV, telephone, maybe a satellite, or anything like that you would typically have a ground for. In the past, you would see these ground wires run to just about anything that you could find, that the installer thought would serve as good ground. Well, now it's part of the code that you provide a grounding bar so that all the necessary services that need that can just screw right into that. And that wire is unbroken, so it just passes through that ground bar, keeps going down to the ground rod. So this is pretty much buttoned up picture. You can see the little cover over the ground bar, and then you can also see where there's a 45 at the bottom of that PVC conduit, and it just lets that copper ground wire exit below the grade, and again it'll be attached to a ground rod and then covered up. So here's a shot of that. You can see there's actually a picture of 2 ground rods here in this picture. One is fully driven into the ground. That's actually the original ground rod, and you can see the one that's sticking up there is a new ground rod that I was attempting to drive in myself and use in place of the existing one, mainly because I couldn't see the existing one. So, yes, it should be 8 foot, but who knows, it could have been only 2 feet in the ground, and without digging and trying to pull it up or whatever to get, I really have no way of knowing that it's actually 8 foot long. So but I give up real quick because I got mine about 3 or 4 feet into the ground and I couldn't get any further. I obviously hit a rock. So that ground rod came up, the one that I was trying to run. It came up and I reused the existing ground rod. You can see that making the wires making a turn around it there. That's it in the corner of the hole that's dug. And here you see in to the right of the picture, you can see the ground wire that's connected to the ground rod with what's called a teardrop connector. I originally used this connector that you see over to the left in the picture, and was told by the inspector when he came out that was not a that connector was not rated for direct burial, which later I picked it up and looked at it closer. It says on the bottom of it that it's rated for direct burial, but when you get told by the electrical inspector that's responsible for passing or failing you that that one won't work, then especially something that minor, you typically just grin and bear it and go on. So which is what I did, and so you can see the teardrop one's been installed. And then this is the trench that's been dug. Behind this door is the ground rod that was shown in the previous picture. So what we're doing here is we're continuing the ground wire still unbroken. So we're running this trench and we're going to connect it to the metal water pipe as it's entering the garage. You see a little bit closer up shot of it. It's still kind of dirty there, so you probably won't be able to see, but there's a clamp, an existing clamp that was there on the smaller pipe. That's the water coming in, and there's a clamp on there that the ground rod will attach to, the ground wire will attach to. Oh yeah, so here's a picture of that in this slide. You can see there I've got it looped around, ground wires attached to the water and then cut off. And basically what that does is that is another requirement. So if you've got water into whatever building that you're running this service to, which probably 99% of the cases you're going to have some type of water service coming in, it's usually a requirement that you ground the water pipes. And so this was in my case an easy way to do it, as it was coming into the building. In other scenarios you would do it where you would basically have access to the pipes, like at the water heater or somewhere like that. And again, that's all assuming metal water pipes. Alright, and here's the finished product. The additional thing here in this picture that we haven't previously discussed is these two clamps that's attached to the 2-inch rigid conduit, and those straps are I don't know, 18 inches apart maybe. I can't remember exactly, but that was another requirement that you have a strap every so many inches as you're going up the side of the building. And again, that's just for additional support. And you can see in this picture, this is obviously after the inspection had been passed and electrical service was restored, and meters has been installed in the base. And I don't know if you'll be able to see it or not, but on the very bottom of the meter base there on the left hand corner, there's the state inspection passed sticker there. And then this picture is going to show a little bit better view of the service, where it comes off the pole and attaches to the basically where I stop my wiring and where the electrical company connects their wiring from the utility to the building. Here's a closer shot of that. So you see this is a weatherhead that's attached to the top of the conduit, and that's, you know, self-explanatory. Obviously, is to keep the elements out of the conduit, and obviously you don't want water inside your meter base. And then we also have a service clamp here. It's got a wire on it, and basically that keeps your tension on the overhead service wires so that, you know, they stay taut and they're hopefully not moving around. And then these wires are marked, and that was another requirement. So the white wire was the neutral, so it had some white electrical tape around it, and then they required one of the two legs of the positive conductors to be marked, and it had to be marked at all locations where it ever ends. So you see it as blue here. It actually was red inside the meter base on a few of the other pictures previously. That was one of the things, just a little minor deal, that electrical inspector said that my particular electrical company wanted them to be blue wires instead of, or excuse me, wanted it to be blue electrical tape instead of red. So I had to go back and just put some blue electrical tape over the red. And so so the purpose of that is to mark one of the legs from end to end. So you can say, okay, this is the leg that, and so it's marked here in this picture, and then it's marked in the meter base twice, once where the other end of this wire is, and then at the beginning of the wire that goes inside the building, and then and on the end of that, which is going to be in the breaker box. And last but not least, this is actually the book that I used for the majority of learning all the ins and outs. I just wanted to include that as a parting gesture. I went through 2 or 3 different books, and this one was the one that I found the most helpful. So if you're looking for a book that also is up with the current national electrical codes, then this is, I would recommend this one for sure. And also with the codes, typically you're going to have national codes, and then you're going to also have local codes that sometimes supersedes whatever the national one is. So for a good example of that, it was for the in my case, the conductors for the service wires. National code said that, you know, if you use aluminum, it had to be this size. Well, I had a local code that was supplied by the my power company that superseded that said, no, we want them to be this size, which was actually a bigger wire. So if I had not went and got the pamphlet with all the local codes in it and just went by the national codes, I would have run too small a wire and then had to gone back and redone it all. So that's another little tip, that before you get started, you want to make sure that you go by your local utility company and get any copies of, mine was just a little book in a pamphlet-like form. It was probably 20 or 30 pages that had local codes in it, and it didn't contain obviously everything that the national codes did, but if there was something in the local one, it usually you used it in place of the equivalent national code. Alright, thanks everyone, and I will continue this series. The next video we'll move inside and focus on the breaker box itself.